Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Camille Arnone. I am going to interview you today for the World Trade Center Oral History Project. First, I want to thank you for taking the time today to do this interview with me. The purpose of this interview is to give you an opportunity to give your personal perspective and story of the World Trade Center disaster and your involvement with the rescue and recovery efforts that followed. By sharing your story, you will help us capture this historic event in a unique and personal way. We believe that your oral histories we gather here will be invaluable to educators, researchers, and the public. As you recount your story, please share as many details as possible. I know that some of the memories that you may be difficult to speak about, but I want you to be willing to share your story at your leisure and your comfort. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing your story today. So to begin, I would like you to please state and spell your first name.
Ronald, Ronald.
Thank you. And can I have the starting time, please?
It is 10:17.
Thank you. Okay, so may I call you Ron or Ronald? What do you prefer?
Ron is fine.
Okay.
I ask people not to use my last name sometimes because it is actually a very difficult spelling last name. I don't mind saying it for confidentiality purposes, but it is Csillag. Most people have not met a Chilag. It is a Hungarian name, which translates to the word star.
Oh, well, that's
We
beautiful.
never changed it when my father arrived to America.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. So, Ron, to get to know you a little bit better, we really just met today. If you would like to share a little bit about your early life, where you grew up, your career, your family, anything that you would like to share with us.
Sure. I grew up in Flushing, Queens, with my parents. My father was a baker. My mother was a homemaker. I have a brother who's 2 years younger. It was an apartment building, a six-floor building with approximately 10 apartments per floor, and there were 8 buildings, approximately 500 families.
Wow.
I attended a public elementary school, which was right across the street from the building. It also had a blacktop schoolyard where we played basketball, softball, touch football, depending on the season. I attended a junior high school in the neighborhood. I attended Hillcrest High School in Jamaica, Queens. I was in the first graduating class in 1974.
Wow.
And following that, I attended Queens College, which was about 7 or 8 blocks from my house. Following Queens College, I attended New York Chiropractor College, which was located here on Long Island. I graduated in December of 1980. In the spring of 1981, I entered private practice in Whitestone, New York. I practiced there for approximately 34 years, and then moved my office to Bell Boulevard and Bayside for about another 8 or 9 years. I was forced to stop practicing a little early due to hand injuries.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 children, a son, Matt, who was born in 1996, and a daughter, Brook, who was born in 1999. My wife, Cheryl, we've been married 30 years and about a month as of today, is a retired operating room nurse. She worked at North Shore Hospital in Manhasset for her career.
Wow. How beautiful. So your children, it sounds like, were very young when 9/11 happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the morning of September 11th, I was actually in a local ShopRite supermarket with my daughter, who was about 2 and a half at the time.
Yeah.
My son was in kindergarten. My wife was at work. It was a Tuesday morning, and we were in the supermarket, and people started chatting that a train hit the World Trade Center. Not a train, obviously a plane. And I just kind of thought that it was probably a small two-seater type plane.
Yeah.
I believe that I had remembered that a small plane had once hit the Empire State Building, a two-seater type plane, and I thought it was something of that nature, of no real significance of
Right.
any kind. We finished in the supermarket, went home, and when I put on the TV, I actually saw the horror of what had happened that morning.
Yeah.
And just as everyone else in the country, I stayed glued to my television the rest of the day. My wife called that they had prepared emergency systems just in case, not knowing what would be happening and how widespread it would be. My son stayed in school in kindergarten for the remainder of the day,
Yeah.
and I stayed home with my daughter, Brooke.
Mm. What were your thoughts as you were watching this all unfold?
It was a horror.
Yeah.
Who would have ever dreamt, who would have ever conceived that our country would suffer such an attack?
Yeah.
There were people I knew who did work down there. I was certainly concerned for their personal safety. I was concerned for the personal safety of anyone I knew in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Out on Long Island, we're in a one-floor ranch house, so I could not see the smoke or uh, the debris in the air over Manhattan.
Hmm.
But television certainly depicted it quite clearly what was going on that day. The horrors of the people jumping off the building,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people walking back over bridges as there was no public transportation available,
Hmm.
and on and on. But my first thoughts really were of the personal safety of individuals I knew down there that day.
Did you lose anyone there that day?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Did you lose anyone there that day?
No, I
Okay.
did not lose anyone personal to me. A couple of my patients did perish on that day.
Mm.
Um, but in terms of personal friends or family, no, I did not.
Okay. Did you attend any funerals of your patients or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I actually did not even know of their passing till a bit later.
I see.
Um, I know one patient, all they ever found was a hip bone. Probably they said the size of a $50 or a quarter or something of that nature.
Yeah.
And I believe there was some sort of funeral, but it wasn't as if I was that close to,
Sure.
you know, it, in practice, there are people you get closer to the years, and there are people that are transient in and out of your life.
Yeah.
They may show up every couple of years when they have an episode. They may show up once or twice and you never see them again. There are some people who have chronic problems you see on a regular basis.
Yeah.
The couple of patients I do have that perished that day were not people I was closer to, or they were more of a transient type patient.
I understand. Okay. Um, so talk to me about when and how you decided to respond.
Soon after September 11th, I guess via email at the time, a message came out from one of the chiropractic associations that there was a request, there was a need for chiropractors on site because after the first few days, most of the injuries on site were musculoskeletal injuries,
Right.
and there was a tremendous need to get workers back to the pile as quickly as possible. They were basically working 16-hour shifts. So even if it wasn't heavy labor, which it was, working 16 hours a day will obviously wear the body down
Mm-hmm.
and create physical musculoskeletal problems. And as soon as I saw the need, I volunteered. I always felt that I owed this country a debt of gratitude. My father came here with 2 cents. He had been in 2 concentration camps.
Mm.
He was in a displaced persons camp, which was basically a place for people who had nowhere to go after the war, and then came to this country.
Wow.
Before he was a citizen, he did serve in the military. He was drafted and sent to Korea. And I always felt as a first generation born American, and the opportunities that this country provided for me, which I didn't feel I would have had anywhere else on earth, I owe this country something. I did not serve in the military. When I turned age 18, I did have to register for the draft, but the draft actually ended 8 days later.
Okay. Wow.
And I always felt, as I said, a debt to this country that I wanted to pay, I serve in some way. And I felt this was my way to do it. And through the years, I had treated quite a few police officers, firefighters,
Mhm.
and people of that nature. And I knew they were down there and I knew they needed help. And I was very grateful that I had a specific skill
Yeah.
that could be of service at this time.
Yeah. Wonderful. So when was the first time that you went down there? Do you remember the date?
I don't remember the exact date, but what
It's okay.
happened was soon after responding to the email, I was asked to go to downtown Brooklyn to fill out paperwork for a background check, have a photo taken, and I received this ID card, which I still carry in my wallet to this very day. I never took it out.
Wow.
Okay, which then I wore on a chain around my neck, which granted me access to the site. Uh, Soon after, within a couple of weeks of September 11th, I do not remember the exact date, I went down there for the first time. And what happened was, at the time, there was no GPS.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually didn't know if I'd ever driven down there before. So I used something very primitive now called MapQuest, where you put in where you wanted to go and you got word by word instructions of how to get there.
Yes.
Following my office hours on a Wednesday evening, I drove down there following MapQuest, and MapQuest said, get on the FDR drive. The FDR drive said emergency vehicles only, but I figured I qualified. I got on, and I was the only vehicle on the FDR drive.
Wow.
When I got off and I got closer to the site, it told me to make a left on a one-way street. And there was a police officer standing there. And unfortunately, the one way was this way, and I needed to go left that way.
Hmm.
And I asked the officer, it's one way. What do I do? And he said, there are no ways down here anymore. Go
Mm.
wherever you want. He saw
Wow.
that I had proper ID, and that was my instruction. I parked in, I believe, a building that was owned by New York Telephone, and I had just gotten a new white Pathfinder Jeep type vehicle. And when I came out, it was covered in this gray, chalky debris that was falling from the sky.
Yeah. So what were some of your impressions when you first saw the site?
When I saw the site, I'm very glad you asked that. I saw the steel girder structure that has become one of the iconic pictures from the site. But when I got there, it was dark outside, but it was brightly lit up. And it reminded me of Gotham City in the Batman movies, how it
Yes.
has that dark eeriness to it,
Mhm.
but it's lit up. It
Yeah.
was a very strange feeling just even looking at it. Um, but that was kind of the first thing that I felt when I saw it. It reminded me of Gotham City.
Wow. Wow. So, um, where did you work when you were down there?
The first couple sessions, when I went down there every other Wednesday night.
Okay.
I would get there approximately 8 o'clock and I would stay till 2 or 3 in the morning till there was no one else to be adjusted. And then I would drive home. Um, the first couple sessions I was there was in a building owned by St. John's.
Okay.
The other thing when I first got there that I found incredible was there was a building. I don't remember which building it was, but the front of it was sheared off. And you know how
Hmm.
when you look into a dollhouse, you see the rooms because the dollhouse has no front to it.
Right.
So you're looking into the rooms.
Right.
And I thought I was looking into a dollhouse. It had that look to it.
Wow.
I was in a building owned by St. John's for the first couple of sessions. And following that, I believe it was about when the Red Cross left the area, everything was moved to St. Paul's Church and a
Hmm.
big tennis bubble type structure, which I was never in.
Okay.
I wound up from then on until early May of 2002 in St. Paul's Church. There were chiropractic adjusting tables set up a few feet from where George Washington spoke on the day he was inaugurated,
Yes.
which I felt was kind of ironic to be
Yes.
so close to such a historic spot at a time when our democracy was trying to be destroyed
Mm,
and being near the spot where it started.
right.
Um,
Wow. That is ironic. Absolutely. So you were there till May, you said.
till the end of the cleanup
Yeah.
effort, which I believe was early May of 2002.
Wow. It's a long time. That's amazing. And you were there every other Wednesday, you said.
Every other Wednesday night.
Yeah, that's quite the dedication. Thank you for that. That's beautiful. What were some of the things that you really took away from your experience there?
The dedication and devotion of the various police units that came, the firefighters, the iron workers, the construction workers, um, the, for lack of a better word, the holiness of the site. I was there at times when a body was recovered and saw the lines of the firemen lined up honoring their fallen brother. That was really, it was almost as if you were at a holy site. I have been to Pearl Harbor. I have been to the Western Wall in Jerusalem. I've been in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And these are all holy sites that we revere.
Yes.
There are people, well, not at the Western Wall, but uh, there are people buried there. There are
Mhm.
people entombed there. And this had that same kind of feeling. Each time I went down there, I would walk down a wooden walkway which led you to the actual site. And I would stand there for a few minutes, say a prayer, walk back. And then there was a wrought iron fence outside the church where people had placed pictures of their missing relatives or friends and put flowers on there with wire and things of that nature. And I would slowly walk around down there and reflect before I walked in. Um, After May of 2002, I did not return down there again until December. We'd gone into the city holiday time with the children,
Mhm.
and they wanted to know why Daddy didn't come home on Wednesday night.
Mm.
And I took them down there. And again, they were young. They were now almost 6 and almost 3.
Yeah.
But we walked along the fence and we saw what was still there. We went into the church. Actually, no, this was December 2001 still, not
Okay.
after the cleanup.
Okay.
The cleanup was still ongoing. I showed my ID. I explained to security, I just want to show my children where I go on Wednesday night. And it turns out there were a couple of state troopers there. I showed them where the adjusting tables were. And they asked me if, who I was, what I was doing in there. And I told them, they asked me, could I adjust them at the moment, which I did. And they explained to my children how I was a hero, which I certainly did not feel I was, but I was humbled by them being kind enough to say it.
Yes.
My parents, I did not tell I was going down there for a little while because I just didn't want to scare them. Um, and I kind of told them that every time I adjust someone, there's an arsenal underneath my adjusting table because they take their firearms off or
Yeah.
lay down their long weapon. I said, I'm probably in the safest place in the city and probably the most well protected. Um, but that was in terms of my family.
Wow.
In terms of being there on a typical Wednesday evening, it was a church, so it had pews.
Mhm.
There was food there. In the beginning, right after 9/11, in the St. John's building, the food was basically food from the best restaurants in the city.
Yeah.
They had not reopened to the public, and they did continue to make food, and they shipped it down for the rescue workers. When things moved over to St. Paul's Church, the food was not of the same level. I generally didn't eat there. I would eat before I left my office, and other than maybe a snack in the middle of a session, I didn't
Mhm.
eat much. but the level of food certainly decreased as time went on, as probably in any other situation, as time goes on, the memory of the general public seems to diminish and what was once unique becomes routine.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Um, while you were down there, did you wear any protective gear um, as
We
far as breathing?
we were advised to wear a safety helmet, goggles, and a breathing mask.
Hmm.
Um, I wore them when I was outside. I did not wear them inside the buildings.
Okay.
Some people did. Um, inside the buildings, I just didn't feel the need for it,
Okay.
but outside I did.
Okay.
And I actually kept in the trunk of my car after that the helmet, the goggles, and the mask for whatever situation might arise.
Yeah. So you were there every other Wednesday for a significant period of time. Um, how did your wife feel about it at the time?
My family was very proud that I went, my extended family, my cousins, aunts, uncles.
Hmm.
There was a lot of pride. She was worried about me to a degree,
Yeah.
um, but was happy and proud that I went. Um,
Good. So you felt supported
oh, yeah,
in your time.
absolutely. My entire family only wanted to know if they had some skill that they could go down and help,
Oh, that's lovely.
including cousins of mine and my family. As it turned out, I was the only one who had a specifically needed, unique skill at that time.
Right.
But people wanted to know what I saw down there, what went on down there.
Hmm.
Um, there were no cell phones with cameras at the time, and I certainly did not take a camera down there
Hmm.
because I felt I was on holy ground and it would be inappropriate. What was I going to take pictures of?
Right.
Firemen, police officers, and other people who looked beat up and exhausted. Most of the rescue workers who worked on the pile were these brown canvas type uniforms you see construction workers wearing
Hmm.
overalls and those jackets,
Yeah.
but they were all covered in this white, chalky, semi liquid substance, which I guess was the residue of the buildings.
Hmm.
I was advised, normally in my practice, I wore button down shirts, ties, white jackets. That when I went down there to wear jeans, t-shirts, polo shirts, sweatshirts, because the substances would be all over you. Chiropractic's a hands-on possession
Right.
and you're close in touching the individuals you're working on.
Sure.
Um, which I did wear that type of clothing. When I got home, as soon as I walked in the door, there would be a garbage bag waiting there. I would take off the clothing,
Hmm.
immediately take it downstairs and put it in the washing machine. If one had worn better, dressier clothing, one would have had to run to a dry cleaner 2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
You certainly did not want what was ever on those clothing items to be in your house or anyone to be breathing them in.
Yeah.
So that's how the appropriate dress was down there.
I see. Um, so you mentioned, I mean, you were doing that obviously to take care of your family and such, and you said you brought your children to the site. Um, I mean, your 3-year-old's probably too young to remember that, but your child who was 6, do they remember?
He remembers little bits of it. He knew daddy was going down there. He knew
Yeah.
daddy was helping. They had both spent time on and off in my office for brief periods of time. They knew what I did.
Yeah.
They had seen adjusting tables. Um, there was a table in our home where I took care of family, friends, neighbors on occasion.
Hmm.
So it wasn't something uncommon for them to see. They knew daddy took care of people in pain.
Yeah.
And whether he bragged to his friends in kindergarten what daddy did, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you talk about your experiences responding to 9/11 now with your family or friends? Um, is it something that you continually talk about?
When it comes up in conversation, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not something that I avoid speaking about. Anytime the topic comes up, I certainly do speak about it, the experiences, the horror of it, the black cloud that was over the city for quite a few days. You could see it from Bayside and Whitestone
Hmm.
if you looked out towards Manhattan. Um, but yeah, I have no aversion to speaking about it.
Okay. Um, I'm glad. I'm glad that you do talk about it when you feel you need to, when people are receptive to it. Um, how do you think working down there and having that experience, you know, it's profound. How do you think it affected you as a person?
I call it, and it's unfortunate, of course, that it happened, but it's the best part of practice I ever had. It was so wonderful to be able to help people of that nature. And again, I practiced over 40 years till I had hand injuries.
Yeah.
But the same people would ask me when I was coming back, I would tell them I had a practice down there. Every other Wednesday, people knew I would be down there and they waited for me to see me. It was very gratifying.
Mm,
It was the most unique experience, obviously, that one could have had. Um, I actually, in a strange way, I almost don't want to say it, looked forward to going because it was such a profound feeling that I was helping people. And when I left, it was such a good feeling that I had actually accomplished something above and beyond a regular day.
yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. It is. It's a beautiful thing to do. Um,
By the way, I was not the
yes.
only chiropractor going.
Yeah.
There were approximately 2 dozen chiropractors going on a regular basis.
A lot of people.
When Christmas time rolled around,
Mm-hmm.
I volunteered to go down Christmas Eve and stay through most of Christmas Day, figuring that the non-Jewish chiropractors would want to be home with their families. It turns out when I volunteered for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, 10 had already volunteered ahead of me, deciding to spend their holiday there instead of with their families.
Wow, that's dedication to a great cause. That's amazing. Um, so it sounds like you worked with a lot of other chiropractors. Are you still in touch with any of the people that you worked with?
We actually each worked individually.
Okay.
You were always there alone.
Okay.
We spread ourselves as thin as possible like that so we could cover as many hours as we could. This was a 7 day a week, 24-hour a day operation,
Mm-hmm.
ground zero. So we tried to have someone there as often as possible. So it was better to have one at a time and have people wait than have two at a time and leave a shift open.
Yeah, I can see that. Um, how did this experience shape your spirituality?
I grew up in a very traditional Jewish home. It increased it tremendously. It almost had to. As I said, you were standing on holy ground. I wasn't standing in front of the burning bush like Moses,
Mm-hmm.
um, but you knew you were standing in a special holy place. You knew there were bodies entombed in close proximity to where you were,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost had to increase your spirituality. Um, there was no way it couldn't. You know, there's a saying, there are no atheists in a foxhole.
Mm-hmm.
You were in a foxhole. You were in a war zone. You were on a battlefield, even though the actual battle, the actual attack, the actual weapons weren't flying while you were there, but you were in the remains of a war zone.
Right.
And you knew it.
Yeah.
as I said, when uh, law enforcement people, before they got on the adjusting table, they would take off their firearms. And I was used to that from my office. I have an uncle who's a retired police captain, and I took care of quite a few law enforcement people in my office.
Hmm.
And they would obviously put their firearm on a chair or under the table when I worked on them. And just seeing that many and of different types, extensive, high ability weapons, I don't know what some of them are called,
Hmm.
let you know you were in a place that, uh, while I'd never felt in danger, you knew danger could be imminent. But again, I never felt scared or in danger there, not once.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing. Um, did you feel like this experience helped you feel more connected or less connected to your community?
Much more connected.
Yeah.
I felt I had always done things of a volunteer nature,
Hmm.
sponsored little league teams, different charities, got involved in some different charity type events, but this was of a totally different nature.
Yeah.
This was, as the expression goes, being all in.
Hmm.
You were part of something much bigger than yourself. Um, as I say, other things, I coached Little League later on and basketball leagues and things of that nature.
Hmm.
And yes, you're giving, you're contributing, but you leave, you go home, and you weren't immersed in something.
Yeah.
This here, you were immersed.
I can imagine. I can only imagine. Um, how do you now, kind of looking back and looking forward, what is your motivation to move forward?
That's a very, very good question. People say that's a very, very good question when they want to think about their answer for a minute.
You could think.
Uh,
Absolutely.
at this point, I no longer practice, as I said, due to some hand injuries.
Right.
Uh, when I realized I was finished practicing, I felt that I still had some gas in the tank and there was something I could do still to help people. I came upon a rabbinic program, which I finished 4 months ago and became Rabbi Ron. I'm able now, not having the disciplined time of being in a practice with hours, to do volunteer work for groups that I never had before.
Mm.
I've become involved with different service groups. I've become involved in certain veterans charities. Um, I'm actually, next Sunday, I believe is the 14th of April, being involved with a wonderful woman, Eva Casal, who runs 7 marathons in 7 days to
Wow.
raise money for veterans charities. And Sunday and Monday, I'm going to be part of her team helping to assist her. Um, but that's the biggest difference. I now do have more time
Yeah.
and I do have more desire, I guess, to become involved with different charities and assist them in whatever ways. I'm involved with some autism charities,
Hmm.
obviously, as a rabbi, a couple Jewish charities, uh, veterans groups, cancer charities,
Wow.
and things of that nature.
Wow. That's amazing, Ron.
Thank you.
You're really someone who gives back to the community. That's beautiful.
And as the saying goes, the giver gets much more out of things than the
Mm.
recipient. So I've actually been blessed with the chance to give more, and it just helps me grow um, and have a greater desire to do more and more.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, charity work does great things for everybody involved. It's a feel good
Obviously,
activity.
you all here know that because you get to serve people every day.
It's true. Yeah. It feels good to be able to help. I can see that. Let's see. So you have some time these days, right? You've retired, you're a rabbi, you're doing all these things with your community. What are some other things that bring you joy in your life?
I love my family.
Yeah.
I love my children. My daughter is still at home with us. She
Mhm.
graduates in 2 weeks with a master's in speech pathology.
Oh, that's exciting.
She already has an internship. She's going to be doing early intervention work with special needs children
Wow.
as a career. She'll be starting in a month or so after graduation. My son works in finance, and when he has the time, he sees us. No, I'm kidding. Um, I love spending time with him. Through a special blessing and gift, he was born with this ability to play golf, and it took us all over the country. It took us all over the world, and we developed a wonderful closeness.
Hmm.
Um, I enjoy being home with my wife. She's retired also. We have more time together than we had through the years.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's, you know, I became a runner at age 65 through a total fluke.
Did you?
I went to a charity 5K run for Scott Beagle, who was the teacher who originally from Huntington was in Parkland, Florida, and threw his body across the door to save his students and was killed.
Oh,
And I
goodness.
thought I would walk around one fall day and look at the foliage, and it became kind of fun. And I started running in 5K, which is 3.1 mile events,
Mhm.
and I run a couple days a week.
Good for you.
Yeah,
That's great. Later in life, becoming a runner. That's
yeah.
amazing. Good for you.
I do
Um,
feel 25 years younger than I felt a couple years ago.
really? That's great. Yeah, staying active, right?
Staying active, I
Yeah,
lost some weight last year. I'm at a good, happy place.
that's nice to hear. That's great to hear. Um, has this interview captured everything you wanted to speak about? Is there anything else that you would like to include?
I did make some talking point notes.
Sure.
I
Take a
think
look.
it really did. Um, the only thing that wasn't covered, I'm glad I just looked.
Yeah.
After May of 2002, I did not return to ground zero again until April of 2022. I didn't see any reason to go there, and it was just something I really did not want to do.
Okay.
A number of firefighters who I had treated through the years, passed on through the years from 9/11,
Mhm.
contracted injuries and illnesses, and it wasn't something I necessarily wanted to see. In April of 2022, now that I became a runner, the World Trade Center Museum had a 5K event, and I decided to participate.
Mm.
I went down there, completed the 5K. Um, with one's ID badge, you are granted free entry into the building normally, but I never took advantage of it. That day, I also had my running bib on, which granted you entrance, and you didn't have to wait online.
Okay.
I decided to go in. Uh, After about 15 minutes, I walked out. I didn't feel a need to see things behind glass or sanitized that I had seen in person.
Mm-hmm.
I have not gone back there since. I have not seen the new World Trade Center building. I haven't been in it. I believe my son did go there with people he knew from out of town to see it. I don't know if my daughter's ever been there. I know my wife hasn't. Um, but I did want to mention that. I also wanted to mention that some of the firefighters who I treated through the years and it did become a little closer to, when I do see of their passing, it does affect me.
Mm.
Um, there was one fella, big, strong man. He played on the fire department football team, Marty Woody McHale. And I was in a shopping center with my daughter. And when we came back out to the car and we looked into a store window,
Mhm.
I saw a poster for the fire department, police department football game. It's an annual thing, which I used to go to. They would give me tickets. And I saw that it was in memory that year of Woody McHale,
Mm.
that he had passed. And I felt terrible. He was such a wonderful man. He had young twin children,
Oh.
um, and he went. This last summer, by coincidence, I found out that another wonderful gentleman, Phil Tofano, who played on the football team with Woody, passed at about age 50-ish,
So
far
young.
too young.
Yeah.
And these fellas were big, strong, muscular, powerful men. After 9/11, Phil became a battalion commander in chief. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated that year. Sports Illustrated always puts on the cover in December the Sportsman of the Year, and they put on 4 firefighters from the football team, hockey, basketball, and baseball team, and they chose Phil to put on.
Mm.
I always kept that framed in my office. Now I keep it framed in my house. And when I hear of the passing of these gentlemen, it does affect me a bit for a few days or
Yeah.
longer. And even when I think back about it, um, it affects me.
Yeah. Of course. How do you deal with that sadness, with that stress? How do you work through it?
I just do like anything else that happens, how we all do. There's the saying that time heals all wounds.
Mhm.
Well, even if it doesn't necessarily heal, it diminishes them. Um, and little by little, the feeling goes down. I go about my business. I don't lay in bed for the day with the lights out or anything of that nature, or things that I've read people do or happen. Um, but it stays in my mind a bit.
Yeah.
It stays in my consciousness. I remember, nice things about them, watching them play football or coming into my office and sharing stories, things of that nature.
Yeah. It's a nice way to remember them. Those little memories. Was there anything else that you wanted to include?
I don't think so. The only other thing is, I was asked to bring down souvenirs,
Yeah.
which I found to be a strange word, but I did bring down a couple of items. I received numerous hats, T-shirts, pins, and things of that nature from various firehouses and
Mhm.
police precincts. Um, I brought down this hat, which was given to me down there by a fireman. As you can see, it looks kind of worn. I still do wear it from time to time. Um, I did not bring down numerous T-shirts. Uh, they all pretty much still fit me, fortunately, but even if they didn't, I would never discard them.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of, as I said, it's the word souvenirs or items,
Mhm.
you really didn't take anything physically away from there.
Yeah.
Um, eh, I mean, what would one take in a little piece of shard of concrete or something?
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense to do so. And as I said, there really are no pictures because we didn't bring in cameras or anything. I mean, the media may have taken. I did not see any media in my time there. I was never interviewed there, maybe because I was always there late at night.
Mhm.
I believe during the day, certain celebrities may have shown up to enthusiastically raise the spirits of the rescue workers.
Yeah.
I didn't see any. I know a number of athletes showed up.
Yeah.
And like I say, media type personalities and celebrities, I never saw them there.
Yeah. So, since these stories,
I have one question
yes,
that I
please.
was very, so let's go back a little bit and think about the beginning when it first occurred. You had mentioned that you're of Hungarian descent,
Yes.
and that your parents were immigrants,
My mother was first generation born
first
here.
generation American. So, and then you also mentioned, that there was some reluctance to talk to your parents about
Mm.
going down there. So go back and was there any personal connection between, um, their previous experience and what you were experiencing now? And did that play any
I
role in
think
your reluctance, that you didn't really want to go there, or that it was a painful reminiscence?
there was nothing really painful, but I think sometimes most immigrants come to this country for a better life or to avoid persecution. Obviously, my father was persecuted to the highest degree. He was in Nazi concentration camps. And I think people who are persecuted always have a little bit of a fear
Mm.
for their children. I think it's a natural fear,
Yes.
wanting to be protective. And in that vein, my father also served in a war zone in Korea for this country. Um, I just didn't want them to worry. I was obviously an adult. Um, and I personally felt safe down there. I was, if my math is right, 44 years old at the time.
Mm.
And I felt as a responsible adult, uh, my decision that I was safe was okay, but I didn't really want them to worry about me no more than when my father served in the United States Army in Korea. He would write home to his parents when he got to this country. You couldn't telephone at that time, or
Mhm.
there was no other means of communication. He would write. When he was in Korea, he would actually mail the letters back to someone in New York who would forward them from New York back to Hungary
Hmm.
so that his parents would not be afraid that he was serving in the military in a war zone.
Wow.
I don't know if that subconsciously popped into my brain or not.
There was no triggering either of yourself, or your parents, in regard to their previous experience or your previous.
Could you repeat?
There was no triggering
No, no,
of
none at all.
so that that this was. I
No,
mean, yeah,
not at
you were
all.
going into a Holocaust.
No. I
You
mean,
had
my,
gone into the Holocaust. There was no, but you didn't feel any relationship.
yeah, well, my parents worried about me. Parents always worry about their children.
Yeah.
That's a natural, normal response of a parent. No matter what, you worry about your children.
Yeah.
Um, no, my parents didn't have any kind of, oh my God, they're coming to get us feeling.
No, you don't have
Oh,
to have that feeling, but did you
no,
have a feeling of
never.
remembering your parents dying,
No,
or
no, no,
anything of that sort? That was not.
not
It
at
wasn't.
all. No. I just didn't want them to be afraid that I was in a dangerous place. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Just being respectful of their.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I can understand that. Um, anything
No,
else?
it's fine.
Okay. So, since these stories that we're documenting in these interviews will ultimately be archived in the Library of Congress and made available to the public, is there anything that you might want someone 20, 50, 100 years from now who's watching this video to know about the disaster or the responders?
I think what I'd want them to know is that as wonderful as this country is, and I love this country, we can never, ever lose sight of the fact that we are always, just as everyone and anyone on earth is susceptible to attack. Things can happen that we don't anticipate. I
Mhm.
don't think anyone saw this coming. No one ever thought that America would be changed or the world would be changed forever by about a dozen people with box cutters. They did not get on the planes with automatic weapons,
Mhm.
bombs, grenades. They had box cutters,
Yeah.
nothing bigger than that. And with those items, they changed our way of thinking and our life forever. In most ways, the country has recovered from this. I assume security on certain levels that we're not aware of because we shouldn't be have changed forever. I also assume with drones and computers and things of that nature, there is a level of surveillance that we never dreamt possible back then.
Yeah.
But whenever people do look back on this, I would like them to see and believe that this is the greatest country on earth. We are very lucky to be here. We have unlimited, untold opportunities for greatness as individuals and as a country. And I always do believe that there should be some form of public service mandatory for people at either age 18 or 21.
Mm.
Not necessarily military service, but some form, maybe going to a poor uh, area of the country and teaching reading to children,
Mm.
maybe working with special needs kids, maybe helping the elderly. But I do feel that every young person would benefit from a year or two of some form of public service and serving this country.
Mm.
Again, it could be military if
Yeah.
that's their choice, and God bless them if it is, but not mandatorily.
Yeah.
But I believe that we learn and grow the most by serving and helping others. And it is one thing our country is lacking, not having a mandatory form of public service.
Well, this concludes our interview with Ron. I want to thank you for your willingness to participate in this important project and taking the time to share your unique story with us.
Actually, I would like to say something.
Please.
If 100 years from now, someone watches me, know that I hope you're there for people the way we were. I can't even imagine that 100 years from now, someone will watch this and know I was there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Time, please.
It is 11:09.
Thank you.